What up, Hackashack? Hello, and welcome aboard the Gallant Says podcast. It is December 31st, 2023. We are live recording this 5:41 p.m. Central Time at youtube.com/Paul Gallant, twitch.tv/Gallant Says. It's also available after the fact wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. If you're tuning into this on Monday, Happy New Year to you. That was a very satisfying victory for the Houston Texans at NRG Stadium on Sunday, 26-3 over the Tennessee Titans. And yeah, we're going to talk about the playoff chances for the Texans over the course of this next week. When we get back on the air doing the regular radio show, we'll talk about all those scenarios. But for right now, take a deep breath and appreciate where things have gone for this organization over the course of just one calendar year. I vividly remember going to that awkward Nick Caserio press conference where he's up there by himself for 30 minutes explaining why he just fired Lovie Smith, with both Cal McNair and Hannah McNair sitting right in front of him. This isn't about Nick Caserio. It's just the team was at a point in January where it really felt like the top of the totem pole for the Houston Texans wanted Nick Caserio to sit there and get pelted by tomatoes. And I guess those tomatoes would be questions from the liberal media. You go from there to hiring DeMeco Ryans, drafting C.J. Stroud, drafting Will Anderson, who was awesome today, Tank Dell, among others. And here you are, closing out the year, 9-7, a chance for 10 wins, a chance to make the playoffs, a chance to win the AFC South. Things will be very disappointing if the Texans lose on Saturday or Sunday or whenever they play the Colts. But right now, take a deep breath and, yeah, be thankful. You don't have to thank the Texans for the shitty experience of the last 3 years, but as someone who is trying to be more grateful for the many awesome things in my life next year, one of my New Year's resolutions, let's do it at the very least for today. They swept the Titans. They beat the hell out of them at NRG Stadium. They're wearing the Oilers blue. They're too chicken shit to wear the actual Houston Oilers uniforms. And you wiped them off the floor. They never had a chance in this game. And it starts, of course, with the quarterback. That's C.J. Stroud. And look, they didn't ask C.J. Stroud to do a lot, but things are just a lot easier with C.J. Stroud under center, right? I mean, whoa. It took them a while to get things going against the Titans 2 weeks ago with Case Keenum, and then they're doing this two-quarterback system at home last weekend against the Browns on Christmas Eve. I'm watching this game in my Christmas Texans sweater, thinking to myself, damn, I think I'm going to go to church in the third quarter. I don't want to watch this entire game because it was really hard for them to get anything going on offense. And it's not like C.J. Stroud was explosive, but you saw a couple of plays and you're like, yep. That's why C.J. Stroud's awesome. Specifically, the guy is so good at throwing passes to the sideline. There's just one throw that he had. I think it was to Robert Woods. He was throwing to his left. It's just a beautiful ball. Just an absolutely beautiful ball. He played it safe. One bad sack, but that's the only sack that the Texans offensive line allowed of him over the course of the game. No interceptions. He took care of the ball. He took what they gave him. And that's something you want to see a bit of, even though you do want to see the big plays from C.J. Stroud. Seems like at times this year he has been pressing to make those big shot plays happen down the field. It wasn't available to them today, but they did. He and Nico Collins hook up for a really nice day, all things considered, because the last time that we saw C.J. Stroud under center was against the Jets, And that game was rough before he even suffered the concussion at the very end. He couldn't get anything going. It's big to have Nico Collins back out there. It's unfortunate that they're not going to be able to have Tank Dell the rest of the season, but this is a nice connection day for both he and Nico Collins. Also on offense, I think the Texans could have given Devin Singletary the ball a little bit more, but Devin Singletary had a pretty good game as well, 16 carries for 80 yards. Let's take a look at some of your comments here. YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. Paul Lawrence comments, YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. What a game it was today. Yeah. Satisfying. Again, you want more red zone touchdowns, 1 for 3, but there's a really good performance by the defense, which we'll get to in just a moment. Best Texans playoff matchup. Miami or Buffalo as a 7, Kansas City as a 6, Cleveland as division champions. Cleveland's defense is very good. Joe Flacco, for whatever reason, had your number in that game. I want no part of Kansas City. I don't care how poorly they're playing. And if I'm not mistaken, it is they're winning now. Okay, early in the fourth quarter, they're up 19-17 on Cincinnati. The other games to keep an eye on as far as just AFC, the Steelers are beating the Seahawks 30-20 with 4:31 to play. So it looks like that one's done. So it looks like the Steelers will also have 9 wins. But hey, you have the tiebreaker over them. The other big games, Jaguars beat the Panthers 26-0. I know I'm going on an ADD tangent right now, but I'm looking at the scoreboard. The Ravens beat the Dolphins 56-19. Holy crap. And they clinch home field advantage. I will say, if I want any team right now, I don't want to go up against Buffalo. I don't want to go up against Kansas City. I don't want to go up against Cleveland. It's Miami. It seems that, once again, Tua Tagovailoa got injured. Is Tua going to be able to go? If he's not able to go, I feel pretty good. The Dolphins have not played well against good teams this year. Are the Texans a good team? They're close, but they're very inconsistent week to week, specifically on the defensive side of things. Johnny Walker says, what up, PG? Happy New Year. Go Texans. Happy New Year to you. Mr. Heisenberg says, Paul Gallant for president. No, I do not want that responsibility. I want to still be able to be, a degenerate. You can't do that. You can't do that if you're president. Although, well, I guess you technically can't, but it's frowned upon. I already muted you, comments. Twitch.tv/Gallant says, proudly wearing my Texans hoodie in Kansas City while they hopefully lose to Cincinnati. You can actually proudly wear your Texans stuff again. They got a winning record. That's nice. And maybe you're still like, but the last 3 years were fucking terrible. But hey, you can wear this stuff out in public. What else do we have? Hacker Shack comments, Kareem Jackson actually played a few plays without diving at someone's head. I know. Hey, defenders' lives matter. There was a moment today that we'll get to a little bit later. Can we stop protecting these quarterbacks the way that we are? That's why Dak Prescott escapes for that 90-something yard throw and run to CeeDee Lamb last night. Like, we baby these quarterbacks so much. Ever Alvarado says, hey, Paul, on X/Twitter. You can watch this on Twitter, twitter.com/Gallant says, hello, Ever. Mick Martinez is trolling me a little bit. Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports. Do you still wear your Patriots stuff? I do. I wore it. I wore it on the flight home. They did win against the Broncos last Sunday. I saw a couple of highlights because Josh Beard was sitting next to me watching NFL Red Zone on his computer, and I looked over a couple of times, and God damn it, Bailey Zappi. He is not the future. Mac Jones is not the future. I still get some, though, ability to wear the Patriot stuff and be a condescending asshole to people. Like, I was talking about that today. Big Sarge and I were chatting before going into the Texans locker room, and he was talking about the Cowboys, and I was like, listen, I still get to claim superiority over everybody, but I get like 3 more years before I become like all those Cowboys fans who were clinging to the 1990s. Hackashack at comments at youtube.com/Paul Gallant. How is the crowd reaction to Tank on the cannon? Sorry, I got there late. I mean, I try to get there at like 11:30, but I didn't sit in my seat until about 11:50 or so, right before the national anthem. Malone Lave 21 says, I'm confident the Texans will beat the Colts. Let's see. We will see. I don't know. I mean, the first game between these two teams, I thought that Shane Steichen outcoached D'Amico Ryans. Totally different teams at this point in time, but Gardner Minshew's done a very good job for Indianapolis, and if you take a look at the at least box score today, I did not watch the Colts game against the Raiders. They won 23-20. They took care of the football. And, I mean, that's what the Texans are going to have to do a better job of. Let's talk about the defense. They are maddeningly inconsistent. I don't know what the fuck to make of them because They get torched by Joe Flacco. They get torched by Zach Wilson. They don't look great against Bryce Young or Baker Mayfield or a variety of other quarterbacks over the course of this season. It's been weird this year. I mean, Anthony Richardson looked awesome against them the first 2 drives. He gets hurt. The Colts still played well with Gardner Minshew in that game. Desmond Ridder had his best game of the season as well. Russell Wilson had his moments. Kyler Murray had his moments. But for whatever reason, when the Texans play the Titans, they kick ass. So in the 1916 overtime win a couple of weeks ago, the Texans sacked Will Levis 7 times. Today, they sacked Will Levis and Ryan Tannehill a combined 6 times. They tackled Titans for a loss 8 times. They held Tennessee under 200 yards. They knocked Will Levis out of the game with a foot injury of some sorts. They scored a touchdown. Jerry Hughes had this great play rushing off the right edge. He blows by the right tackle for Tennessee, punches the ball out of Will Levis's hands. Sheldon Rankins picks it up, takes it to the house. 6 points on the board right there. I think Tannehill came in right after that moment because I remember seeing him limp off the field and then seeing the Titans training staff walk him to the tunnel and then stop, make him walk back so that he could get on a golf cart to go in, and we didn't see him the rest of the game. But they scored the touchdown there. Sheldon Rankins returns it for a touchdown. Desmond King nearly had a pick 6. He also nearly had a fumble 6. They babied Ryan Tannehill where he's in the grasp of a defender. It's a sack. He spins out of it, and Desmond King, it's not the Matrix. He just hits him very hard, takes the football away. If the quarterback's not down, I don't know what you're supposed to do in that situation. I get it. There was a whistle. He should have heard the whistle. But if you've ever played defense, it's a lot easier said than done, and it is getting more and more confusing, as evidenced by that play where Dak Prescott escaped the rush last night, where defenders don't want to get fined. Like, would you want to get fined $20,000 for hitting a quarterback? Obviously, you're making a lot of money, but it's still $20,000, you know? That's the incentive to stop you from doing these things. It's very hard for a defender in today's NFL. So they almost had 2 touchdowns from Desmond King. And Christian Harris, a little bit later, in a ball don't lie kind of moment, it was 4th down, he almost had a pick 6 on 4th and goal too. So they almost had 3 touchdowns. They at least score 1 touchdown. They held Derrick Henry to 12 carries for 42 yards. And they held DeAndre Hopkins in check at least until Ryan Tannehill came into the game. He had 7 catches for 72. I don't know why they are so good against the Titans, but they are very good against the Titans and way better against the Titans than they are against anybody else. Is that a reflection of the Titans' coaching staff, their offensive coordinator? I don't know, but I mean, the Titans clearly have talent. I think Tyjae Spears is a pretty good player. He's quick. It's 6 carries for no yards today. Derrick Henry, again, 12 carries for 42 yards. They held him under 200 yards over the course of the game. Now, could have been worse. There were a couple of moments downfield. I think we saw right before halftime when the Titans got on the board where Jimmy Ward was – no, not Jimmy Ward, my bad. Jalen Petrie, I think, was right near a post route that was thrown to was it Chris Moore? Was it DeAndre Hopkins? I'm not sure, but like he was a step late, and you're like, oh, fuck, of course. It's been a rough year for Petrie in coverage. There were a couple other plays as well where – the Titans could have had a big play. First drive of the game, the Titans ran a shot play, and Levis overthrew it a little bit, but the receiver had to step on the defender, whoever was covering him. Again, you think about the safeties, where the safety's at. And then there was another deep throw that Levis put up to Chris Moore, and Moore seemed to lose it. So the shot play still always dicey with this team. They do allow the big play, but they do a great job against the run. After the game, during the post-game press conference, Will Anderson went on a tangent about how, like, the first thing that the defense thinks about is stopping the run, and they have done a very good job against it this year, especially compared to last year. While we're on Will Anderson had 2 sacks on back-to-back plays. He had 3 quarterback hits. The sacks have been close all year long, and you're just hoping that those numbers are going to look better at the end of the year. But the numbers when it comes to pass rushers are always a tad misleading. And I know there have been some people out there that I know my colleague at ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, Jeremy Branham, who could be a troll at times, but he's been annoyed by all the advanced numbers explaining that Will Anderson is a great pass rusher. He wants to see the actual results. And these results are definitely good, I would hope, for Jeremy to realize, like, he's a good player. Is he going to be great? We don't know, but he's definitely a good player. I will take good with any draft pick that I have early on. Good means not a bust. If the guy can play, the guy can play. Anderson can clearly play. And he has the 2 sacks on back-to-back plays. We talked about Jerry Hughes. We haven't seen much of Jerry Hughes this year compared to last year. I think he had 9 sacks like early on last year. Derek Barnett, who they found off the street, 1.5 sacks. And there's no Jonathan Grenard in this game, which is when the Texans had the 7 sacks. You're thinking to yourself, okay, well, maybe this isn't going to be so good. But they had 6 sacks today without Grenard, who leads the team in sacks with 12.5. And then probably my favorite Houston Texan is Christian Harris. Harris sticks a couple of people a game, and I don't know if he's the best in coverage, but he almost had a pick 6. He had 2 deflected passes today. I just love watching him play. So he had a good game. And Desmond King, got to talk about Desmond King. Had a lot of tackles, had a couple of nice punt returns. So he's really, since coming back to the Texans, carved, I think, a great rollout for himself as one of those, like, inside-the-box defensive backs. And I hope he's on the team next year. I think he's earned his way onto the team next year. But they're going to have to figure out what the fuck's going on at safety. You know, Kareem Jackson's out there, and hey, things are better than they've been. But, you know, there still were a couple of moments where you could have given up big plays. That's my only nitpick about the defense. Otherwise, great game, and we just got to figure out how the fuck they could do this against the Titans more often. Or excuse me, not the Titans. Against teams not named the Titans. That's the problem. You're expecting this against the Titans. But you got to do it against other teams from time to time, and that's been a struggle. It's also been a struggle, weirdly, against, like, good quarterbacks. Excuse me, not good quarterbacks, like bad quarterbacks. And that's been the weirdest part of the whole year, probably. So anyway, let's see some comments here. YouTube.com/Paul Gallant, Twitch.tv/Gallant says, Instagram @SportsGallant, Twitter @Gallant says. We're actually streaming on 5 things right now. SMU_Sunny. Those are 3 Bulls. Are those Bulls on parade? Another comment. Miguel Martinez, YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. Shane Steichen's going to pull out all the tricks. We have to be ready. Yeah. And I got to say, there were a couple of moments today where I thought Bobby Slowick was being a little bit too cute. Like, it's 1st and goal from the 10, and you're running an end around to Xavier Hutchinson. Come on. Can we you ran a cute little play to set up a screen that gets you inside the 10. You need to do back-to-back plays where you're getting cute. Again, we go back and forth with Slowick between, like, oh, he's going to be head coach somewhere else next year, to, oh, he's not good. I think he is a first-year offensive coordinator that's learning how to do things. I think he's doing a pretty good job, but every now and then he gets a little bit too cute. And I'm not the biggest fan of that. Ever Alvarado asks at x/twitter.com/Gallant says, what do you think will be the keys to victory next week? A little nervous. Don't turn the ball over. Like that. I know that's lame, but right now you have to take care of the football. I do think the Texans did a very good job of taking what was given to them. Things are going to be a little bit more conservative, and I think Stroud, after the game at his post-game press conference, talked about how they were looking for some of those shot plays and they want to be explosive. And he said it a couple of times this year. Most players in the league want to be more explosive. I think they're going to have to be patient in this game, and the defense is going to have to shut down Jonathan Taylor, and you're going to hope that Gardner Minshew makes a couple of mistakes along the way. More comments, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Joseph Ramos says, about time we had an easy win. Amen to that. And a quick win. That game was done at 2:40. Hell yeah. Especially when you're playing a team like that doesn't have any playoff hopes. Hack-a-Shack comments, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Our defense alternates between being shitty and being beast. Doesn't look good for next week. Yeah, it has been back and forth the last couple of games. I would just more so specifically point to the fact that the Texans own the Titans' offense for some reason. Mr. Heisenberg says maybe Will Anderson Jr. lining up on the left side made a difference. That's possibly true. Miguel Martinez says the Texans always just screw up Will Levis. Well, yeah, I mean, thus far, they seemingly have knocked him out of 2 games. I don't know if Levis would have come back in that game against the Texans a couple of weeks ago, because it looked like he died. The CBS broadcast made it sound like he died, like the replay was so horrible they couldn't show it, and then all of a sudden he's like walking around on the sideline like nothing had happened. More comments here. YouTube.com/Paul Gallant, Twitch.tv/Gallant says, Hackashack and High Z had a back and forth, and I think it's about how Will Anderson has more sacks than J.J. Watt did his rookie year. It's a fair point. I don't think you need to compare the two. Watt's the best defensive player we've ever seen here in Houston. I know some people are going to be like, well, Dr. Doom, Robert Brazile, or some other players. J.J. Watt's the best defender the Texans have ever had, obviously, and probably one of the best in recent NFL history, in total NFL history. We don't need to do this. We don't need to do this. I think it's wasted energy. You know? Like, hey, he's a 3rd overall pick. Just be a good player. Be a productive player. Have a good attitude. Be somebody that can be a leader for this team. Clowney, for all the moments that I thought he played well, I thought he was so good against the run for the Texans, there was definitely a little bit to be desired from the, hey, like, we took you 1st overall. Are you part of a winning culture? I know that's an annoying thing to say, and sometimes it's coded in racism. I'm not trying to go down that road. I'm just saying Jadeveon Clowney was not, in my opinion, on the same level as a Will Anderson in terms of, like, being committed. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that one was at South Carolina and the other one was at Alabama with Nick Saban. I think you're just wired a little bit differently when you're going through that program, and especially if you're taken very early on. What other comments do we have? YouTube.com/Paul Gallant, Twitch.tv/Gallant says, Shredder says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Skeeter 2 times asks, Paul, where the party at? We will see. I'm just hoping that it hasn't been canceled yet. Shredder S07, glad we beat the Oilers sloppy seconds, he says at youtube.com/Paul Gallant, but a couple of the field goal drives should have been touchdowns. Will be tough to continue winning without better mid and deep throws and receivers creating separation. Here's the thing, like, what you're getting right now is what you're going to get. You need probably more out of Dalton Schultz. Nico Collins, I thought, played very well today. But you just got to take what you can get. You're not really getting it from John Mechie or Xavier Hutchinson. You got good protection today, but the coverage downfield was good enough. And yeah, that generally is a reflection of the receivers' overall skills. And that's a little bit frustrating for those who I think are hoping that John Mechie can be a 2nd-round caliber player. You know, he's overcome a lot. It's a great story, but the separation, is he creating it on a level that you would have expected from a guy that was considered a possible 1st-round pick, not for the torn ACL that he had? I wonder about that right now. And yeah, the red zone offense has to be better. You can beat a team like the Titans not scoring touchdowns. And credit to Kaimi Fairbairn, who's been great. He's 4 for 4 on field goals today. He's 23 of 24 on the year in 10 games. Probably one of the best kickers in the NFL right now. But you can't win if you're always relying on Kaimi Fairbairn. You got to get touchdowns when you're going up against Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. If Tua's healthy, Tua with the Dolphins. Like, there are some real big boy offenses. And look, you got C.J. Stroud, so it's not like it's a completely uneven playing field. It's just you got to get more when you have the opportunity to. And I think sometimes, yeah, it's receivers not creating separation, but other times I think they get a little bit too cute in the red zone. You don't need to do double reverses all the time. You got Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary running up the middle works pretty well. Run up the middle with Devin Singletary. Sometimes simple is good and easy, and it works, and it clearly has worked against Tennessee running the football. More comments, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Daniel Pena asks the question, are the Texans better next season? You would hope so. C.J. Stroud going into his 2nd year. Will Anderson going into his 2nd year. Hopefully healthy Tank Dell. Hard to predict, though. It's always hard to predict. And it really is going to depend on how aggressive I think they are in free agency. Are they going to try to sign some big names? You don't need to sign big names necessarily to win, but I'm very curious if we're going to see the Texans change what their recent strategy has been, specifically under Nick Caserio. Like, they're not a go out and get a guy like Mike Evans team, at least to this point. Mike Evans will be a free agent. T. Higgins will be a free agent. They probably need more help at receiver. You always can use help at receiver, and they're going to need help at safety as well. I think they'll also need some depth on the defensive line. Like, Jonathan Grenard's probably going to get a big payday elsewhere. You'd love to keep him around, but at the same time, you're probably thinking to yourself that you can get the adequate production out of him without having to pay a guy who's got 10 plus sacks a year kind of money, because that's like $20 million a year territory. Another comment here. Brevin Jordan at fullback actually worked out pretty well. Yeah, that actually did work out pretty well. All right, so I'm going to give 3 stars for today's game, like it's hockey. Number 3. So number 1 is number 1, number 2 is number 2, number 3 is number 3, but we're going to go in reverse order. Desmond King, he had 8 tackles, he had a near pick 6, he had a near fumble 6. I know some people are mad about him hitting Tannehill after the whistle or whatever. Whatever, fuck that. I hate that quarterbacks are treated like special little princes. Tannehill didn't even fall to the ground. He spun into King. Fuck that call. And he had 2 nice punt returns as well. He's having a pretty good year now that he's back with the Texans. That second punt return, it was very close to being a touchdown. I think he ran out of steam for a second. Kaimi Fairbairn's my number 2 star. I mean, he's automatic. He hit that 50-plus yard field goal. He's 4-4. He's 23-24 on the year in 10 games. And then number 1, this is kind of a cop-out because I had a hard time picking one specific pass rusher, but the whole pass rush. Jerry Hughes gets the strip sack. Will Anderson has sacks on back-to-back plays. Derek Barnett steps in for Jonathan Grenard. He gets that sack and a half. I think Kurt Heinisch had half of a sack. They did a hell of a job, the pass rush, as they have the last 2 games that they've gone up against Tennessee's 13 total sacks in 2 games against Tennessee. Tennessee's offensive line, yikes. It used to be good. Remember that? Not anymore. But you got to give them a lot of credit today. So I think they were the stars of the game, and somehow they got to find a way to do this against teams that are not named the Tennessee Titans. As far as what happened around the league, really quickly before we hit the road, the Jaguars shut out the Panthers 26-0. God, that loss to the Panthers still looms large. They did this with C.J. Beathard. I call him C.J. Beat Hard under center, and basically they did it by just running the ball. Travis Etienne Jr. had 102 on the ground and 2 touchdowns. This Bryce Young stat line, yikes. 19 of 32 for 102 yards, 1 interception. He was sacked 6 times for 45 yards. You take out the sack yardage, the Panthers had 67 yards of passing net. The Jaguars are going to play the Titans the last game of the year. I mean, if Ryan Tannehill goes, you would think that Tannehill's going to be playing for a contract elsewhere. It doesn't really make sense for the Titans to put Will Levis Anderson into the last game of the year, either if he's hurt. So maybe there's a chance. I mean, Jacksonville did lose 4 games in a row going into this one. But convincing victory like that, I bet they're feeling a lot better about themselves after really just shitting themselves over the games before that. The Colts beat the Raiders 23-20. I took a look to see if there was anything statistically interesting. Nah, not really. Not really. You know, they had a 17-3 lead at one point, and they kicked 2 second-half field goals. The Raiders are limited by their quarterback situation. I do love Aiden O'Connell, him being an Irishman and all, or at least sounding like an Irishman and all. Especially with all this Tommy DeVito shit that we had to sit through. Why is Tommy DeVito a big story? Because he's Italian in New York. Why is his agent hogging media attention? His agent's the guy I have the most of an issue with. Like, fuck off, Sean Stellato. Like, no one cares. How did he get into the Italian-American Hall of Fame for sports? I don't know. The Bills have 10 wins, which complicates things a little bit as far as the AFC total picture. They're going to play Miami week 18 in a game that will likely decide the AFC East, unless there's something else I'm unaware of. I want to take a look at 2 other scores with games that are in progress. Kansas City seems to have pulled away enough from the Bengals. It's 25-17 with 2:59 to play in the game. Cincinnati's on their own 25. Are you expecting Jake Browning to go down the field against Kansas City? No, so that's going to put Cincinnati in a really difficult spot as far as making the playoffs. I think they'll probably be eliminated with the loss again. Off the top of my head, I don't know. The Broncos are hanging around. They're up 16-6, but I think if the Chiefs win, they clinch the AFC West. Again, doing this off the top of my head. If I'm wrong, sorry. And Pittsburgh beat the Seattle Seahawks. Of course, the game that when I was on the Killer Bees this week, I picked the Seahawks to win. Of course, I'm wrong. So the Steelers are 9-7, but luckily, since the Texans beat the Steelers early in the year, that means that the Texans have the tiebreaker over specifically them. So really, it is going to come down to what happens in this game against the Colts. We might have a show New Year's Eve, late afternoon. To be perfectly honest, it 100% depends on the misbehaving that I do tonight because it's New Year's Eve. And even though I'm 34 years old and I have learned over all the New Year's Eves that I've been a part of over my life that they're generally disappointing, this one's going to be different. 2024 is going to be different. This was the biggest game of the season for the Houston Texans. This is the biggest day of your life, and next year is going to be the biggest year of your life. Appreciate everybody who tunes in and watches this show. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. Or if you're a Twitch person, twitch.tv/Gallant says. You can watch the show live. You can see my face as the show goes on. It's so critical, I think. Or maybe it's just entertaining because my eyebrows dance a little bit. You can also watch it on Facebook, facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports, Instagram @SportsGallant, or on Twitter @Gallant Says. This is also available in podcast form. We'll have a podcast uploaded in a little bit. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. I appreciate your support so much. I think we've made a lot of progress over the course of the year in turning this live stream into a fun little show. We'll do another one definitely Thursday night. And, of course, we'll have another one after the Texans and Colts season finale. Until our next show, so long, farewell, have yourselves a wonderful rest of your New Year's Eve and an even better 2024. I am merely Paul Gallant.